So if you're confused on why some stocks are flat and other stocks are rising, that's because we are having a massive market rotation at work. And in this video, I want to go ahead and go beyond what the mega headlines are sharing and actually break down what is actually taking place within the markets. So we had a lot going on. We had the Federal Reserve make their stance on monetary policy. We had the GDP economic report. We had mega earnings from large companies like Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, etc. So there's definitely a lot going on, and I want to go ahead and share with you guys what is actually taking place. See, when we take a look at the S&P 500, we see that we're kind of having a flat day. Not much is going on. But then when you take a look at the S&P 500 equally weighted, which is ticker symbol RSP, we actually see a bit of a different story. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because this is kind of showing you where the rotation is actually taking place. See, when you think of the S&P 500, you think of all the companies within the S&P 500, but the larger mega cap tech companies have a larger weighting. And so when you look at Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, right? These are all companies that have a huge weighting in the S&P 500. And so you could have the overall market doing bad, but just those large companies doing good, and see the S&P 500 actually push upwards. But what we're actually seeing right now, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at this, is that we're seeing the large mega cap names like Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon actually kind of being a bit bearish, while the overall market, all the other names, including some of the other large names like Tesla, is actually pushing upwards. And so what we're starting to see is that capital is starting to broaden away from the concentration of those large mega caps, and we're seeing that pretty much all the other companies in the S&P 500 are actually pushing up. And that's again why we're seeing the RSP have this healthy push up, and that's a good sign of the market. That shows a sign of strength. Despite some of the large mega caps having some weakness, this is a good sign for the market. And this makes sense considering the earnings that we recently got. For example, here's a snippet I wrote to the Push and Profit private group last night, just touching about Microsoft. And I wrote how Microsoft beat on both revenue and earnings, but they guided for a weaker upcoming quarter. And this is why I often say that when you're taking a look at earnings, there's a lot of nuance, right? A company can do well on their earnings report, but it's also important on how they guide for the future. And so that was the case for Microsoft. And we also saw that for a few other companies like Meta, Tesla. There was a bit of nuance there as well. We actually saw everything come downwards, right? Revenue, earnings, margins. But we actually heard Elon, the CEO of Tesla, have some positive outlook for the future, especially with news on the robo-taxis. And so that's why we actually saw Tesla not do so bad in comparison to some of the earnings report that we recently got. But what we're seeing again is this huge rotation, which is why if you're participating in the market, you may want to go ahead and trim some of the profits that you may have gotten from some of the large mega cap companies and start to kind of look into the smaller pockets, some of the smaller companies, right? For example, one of the trade ideas I shared within the Push and Profit private group was this trade idea for HIMS, which actually is up tremendously within the last few trading sessions, which is a smaller company that has just a market cap of 7 billion, which I know sounds like a lot, but it's not when you compare it to some of the larger names, like for example, Apple at 3 trillion. Now, I did do a deeper review for why I like the position for HIMS for those within the Push and Profit private group, but if you're interested in getting deeper market insights and me sharing what positions I'm entering in and what positions I'm exiting out, make sure to check out the links in the description below, because one of the links is going to be a link for the Push and Profit private group where I go ahead and do my daily market updates and my daily briefings where I talk about what's currently going on. And there's been lots of positive reviews for those within the Push and Profit private group. For example, we hear Johnny with 2 N's here saying how he loves the daily briefings. He's been a part of many other groups in the past, but they just show stock charts with price levels where he found that we go way deeper. So again, if you're interested, make sure to check out the links in the description below. I'll also pin it in the comment section below as well. But now that we know that there's this huge market rotation, we have to understand, well, who benefits? What companies benefit from this rotation out of the large mega cap companies into smaller companies, and that's where you're going to want to look into my friend IWM, which is the Russell 2000, which we see the Russell 2000 is pushing up as well. And this makes sense considering that this current administration also in the past has promised that they're looking to deregulate. And so that means that we're likely to get more mergers and acquisitions, more IPOs. We're going to see a lot of the smaller companies start to perform well as we start to see more deregulation, because we have to understand for the larger companies, when there's a lot of regulation, they could afford the lawyers, the paperwork, and to kind of go through all, the bureaucracy of everything. But when you have the smaller companies who can't afford it, well, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But with this idea that, hey, we're entering into a new era, a new environment for the smaller cap companies, well, that's pretty bullish. And so that's why we're starting to see, the big wigs on Wall Street start to kind of trim from their positions on the larger cap companies and kind of spread things out to a lot of the smaller companies as well. But with that said, I want to go ahead and hop into my laptop. This way we could cover a few additional topics as well. And I also want to put a friendly reminder, if you haven't done so already, to make sure to hit that like button if you found any value in today's video. And also check out in the description, there's another link which is completely free to get my free weekly market post insights. And so this is basically where every week I send out an email talking about what's going on. It's not as deep as the Push and Profit Private Group's daily briefings, but it's free. So why not click that link to go ahead and join for free? And with that said, let's go ahead and hop into my laptop. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop, and earlier I mentioned how we are seeing RSP push up, which means that many of the constituents in the S&P 500 are pushing up, while the mega cap names are kind of pushing down, but we're seeing strength in the market. However, we have to talk about another aspect that I'm not a big fan of, right? I don't like to tie in politics and geopolitics when it comes to doing my analysis on the markets, but we have to understand what is currently going on. And we had a major development from today that may continue to change the landscape and kind of continue to point to the direction that I've been saying for this video, which is a smaller company. So what did we end up getting for today, right? Well, we actually got news just a few minutes ago, just 20 minutes ago, that President Trump had initiated tariffs on Mexico and Canada. In fact, we see here it was in the air, but now it is official. President Trump confirmed Thursday the United States will impose 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico starting February 1st. And so what I want to go ahead and break down is what are the ramifications, or rather, how does this impact the market and where capital is likely to continue flowing? Now, again, I don't want to, get political here. We're not saying Team Red or Team Blue, right? That's besides the point. Whatever the reason why he's doing it, if I start talking about illegal immigration, drug trafficking, trade deficits, that could delve into the spectrum of politics, and that's not what I really want to talk about, right? Of course, I just want to keep it strictly on the economic landscape and how this impacts the market. And so all we need to pay attention to is this part over here. Tariffs are here, right? Or they're coming, rather, in just a few days, right? To Canada and Mexico. So what does this mean for the market? Well, let's actually tune into the DXY, which is the United States dollar, the Dixie, the greenback. And what we're likely to see is that the dollar is going to be strengthening again. So what does this mean for the markets? Well, if you've been following the channel, which again, if you haven't, just, kind of friendly reminder to hit the subscribe button. But in a few videos a few weeks ago, I mentioned how the dollar being high was, causing the market to have a little bit of weakness. And that's because a lot of people, we like to see the dollar high as consumers, because then it's better for us to travel. Our dollars are worth more. I mean, you go to Asia, or Japan or wherever, right? Your dollars are worth more when the dollar is high, and that's good, right? You could kind of get a better experience for less money. Always good. But why does it impact the market? Well, the large mega cap names, think of companies like Tesla. I say Tesla just because we talk about them, but they're not the only ones. But international companies where they get currencies, from, let's just think about Tesla, right? They sell cars in China, they sell cars in Europe. And so if the dollar strengthens, the currencies that they get in those other countries will have to be converted to dollars, and they'll be weaker to the dollar, so that impacts their revenues. And we don't think about that as a consumer, but of course, if you're trying to analyze how this impacts the market, well, a higher dollar value is kind of bad for those larger international companies. And so what we're seeing here is we're likely to see the dollar strengthen, right? Because tariffs on Mexico and Canada, right, it makes imports into the United States more expensive, right? So let me just break down, what these tariffs actually do, right? So it encourages businesses and consumers like us to buy domestic products, right, from U.S. Producers. So this is good for the U.S., right? It reduces the trade deficit and supports demand for the U.S. dollar. Because again, foreign companies selling into the U.S. might need to convert more of their local currencies into dollars to pay the tax-related costs, and so that higher demand for the dollar, it strengthens its value relative to our other currencies. In fact, I'm not sure if Webull, I don't look at forex here on Webull, but I'm pretty sure if I were to look at let's see, does it mention it here? Oh, there we go. We actually see it right here. There we go. See, we already news after this. We're already seeing the market reacting sharply. The Canadian dollar. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I knew it. I wasn't sure if Webull was gonna have it, but that's the brokerage I'm looking at right here, the chart. But there we go. The article mentioned it. We could already see the currencies kind of doing their thing now that of course, the tariffs have been announced. And so anyways, going back, I kind of went off tangent. But anyways, a strong dollar, it hurts stocks, right? These multinational companies, because it makes their products more expensive in foreign markets, reducing also export competitiveness and profits. And so that's something we want to think of. So going back to what I was saying earlier, right? Well, if the dollar is likely to strengthen because of these tariffs, that means these large companies, right? And I say Tesla, but I don't mean to single them out, right? It could be Apple, it could be all these companies, right? But the matter of the fact is that that's gonna probably hurt some of their margins, their revenues, etc. And so this means that the smaller cap companies, who are not, multinational companies, are likely to benefit, right? And so, I mentioned earlier in the video IWM. IWM is just the Russell 2000. It's just like has 2,000 of these like small caps. Not a big fan, by the way, of trading the Russell 2000. I like looking at it to kind of gauge how small caps are doing. But I like trading the individual small cap companies, right? For example, I mentioned, that within the Push and Profit private group, I shared the trade idea HIMS. We look at HIMS from the beginning of the year. Let's just go to the beginning of the year. That was here we go, the second, I think, is when the market opened. Here it's already up 38%. So, and this, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a small company, right? We look at their market cap, 7 billion, and again, 7.4 billion is huge. But when you look at who's the biggest right now, is it Apple? Who knows, right? I think it may be Apple. It may be Apple or Nvidia, but I know Apple for sure. 3 trillion, right? You look at billions to trillions, it's not, that's like apples to watermelons, right? No pun intended with Apple, actually. But yeah, so the main point is, and again, I already trimmed some of my position, by the way, for HIMS. I'll go ahead and also provide an update for those within the Push for Profit private group tonight, as I often do. But the main point is, I believe that we're likely to see more capital flow, not necessarily to HIMS, right, but to a lot more of the smaller cap companies, right? But I'll go ahead and provide an update for those within the Push and Profit private group. Hopefully, you guys got value from this portion of the video. Got a little bit deeper, but not too deep, right? But if you want more deeper analysis, again, join the Push and Profit private group, and I'll provide some insights there. And I'll see you guys on this next video right over here, where I talk about how to dominate the market. Take care, guys.